Hello, welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for Swooner Crooner, released in 1944. It's the 429th in the series, and it's directed by Frank Tashlin. You can find this on the Looney Tunes Golden Collection Volume 3 DVD set, and on the Platinum Collection Volume 3 Blu-ray set. I have links below to those sets. Because you won't find this on YouTube, it's under copyright, YouTube will just block the video. So in case you haven't seen this one, Porky's farm is laying eggs for the war effort, but the hens get distracted by a Frank Sinatra type rooster. So Porky auditions for a new crooner and ends up picking a Big Crosby type, and they have a sort of crooner battle of sorts towards the end, which is kind of weird, but anyway, we'll definitely go through it all. First up, you're going to see is a re-edit of the original commentary I did before I had to take that down, and that features my good friend Austin Kelly and Steph Stilley. And after that, you'll hear some new thoughts from me. So without further ado, let's get into it. And with me today are my fellow hens, Austin Kelly and Steph Stilley. Say hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. I'm here, of course, because this is a Tashlin cartoon. Very fun one, scripted 8 months before its release in May 1944, during the early fall of 1943. Working title, Ham and Ecstasy. Just wanted to get those quick facts out of the way.
Of course, of course.
It's a good title.
We're hearing Powerhouse, of course, here, which is becoming pretty commonplace. I think Carl Starling must have really loved using those compositions, huh?
This song's perfect for, like, factory montages.
Yeah, yeah, it works so well. So well. And I like the added touch, well, okay, aside from that smile from the hen right there, I like the touch where during this time, with the men off to war in World War II, the women were picking up the slack in a lot of war factories, for munitions and other things. And I like the fact that it's like hens that are doing the work, so the women have gone to the factory. It's a nice little touch. That's what I've noticed. It's
kind of tough pinpointing the early Tashlin animators because it was just such a tough switch over when McCabe leaves and Tashlin comes in. You can't really spot a lot of people easily. But I will say the guy who originally got the animator credit never got credited at Warner's again. His name is George Canada. The only place I'm aware he worked at outside of Warner's was the Terry Toons studio earlier in the 30s. I believe some of his work on some Terry Toons were confirmed by surviving documentation on the Cartoon Reacher's site.
He's credited on some Fleischer cartoons from the early 30s as well. So he was an East Coast guy.
Yeah, but you can spot. I think that's Cal Dalton with the Frank Sinatra rooster there, and
that's Frank Sinatra?
all kinds of great typical. Izzy Art Davis.
First off, I'm a massive Frank Sinatra fan, so I get a kick out of this cartoon. He was the new big thing at the time. He's had hits for several decades. But yeah, this is the first attempt, and he was very thin at the time, which is why they're poking so much fun at his anemic physical stature. He was immensely popular, but strangely enough, his early stuff isn't really that remembered these days. He's more well known for like the stuff he did later on in the 50s and 60s. Tex Avery must have really liked this one because he kind of remade it sort of with a similar kind of plot and some similar jokes a few years later at MGM with a short called Little Tinker. Only he amps it up and makes it even more savage by having him singing from an iron lung at one point with plasma connected to his arm.
Here we go. Now we'll need some identification for who are these people auditioning. So who's this first musician here?
Nelson Eddy, I think.
Not sure.
Is who they're making fun of. Kind of like an operatic singer. And we got Al Jolson, of course.
Here we go.
And Jimmy Durante, of course.
Schnoz,
great, the one and only. Yeah. If you ever get a Jimmy Durante record, you should listen to it. And of course, we have Cab Calloway, the great. You might remember from several Fleischer shorts from the previous decade.
Tashlin, of course, already did something with like a Cab Calloway, where Porky was literally Cab Calloway from a few moments.
Porky at the Crocodile.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, that's a really funny one.
Before Frank Sinatra came, he was the biggest and most popular male vocalist at the time. And he still had a long career. There was a lot of rivalry at the time in the press, but they were good friends. And they even did a film together in the 50s called High Society, which also has Louis Armstrong and Grace Kelly, and it's a good picture. No, there was no rivalry. It was a publicity thing, because that kind of thing sells more records.
Like that was just a disturbing joke, that giant egg with the... that was a really disturbing one. Just as disturbing as the eggs going back in to the hen before that we saw earlier on.
It's a classic. Should have won an Oscar in my book.
Over Mouse Trouble?
Yeah, I like this one better.
So those were the original thoughts on the commentary, and I really enjoyed doing that commentary. It was quite fun, actually. And yeah, I do prefer Mouse Trouble over this one in terms of the Oscar if we were comparing the two. Look, I love both, but I slightly prefer Mouse Trouble, but then again, that could just be nostalgia for me because I grew up watching that short a lot when I was younger, so they're both great though, they really are, so I don't blame people if they like Swooner Crooner over Mouse Trouble. They're both great. Watch both if you can. But one thing that wasn't mentioned, and I didn't realize this at the time, was that this is actually the only Porky Pig short to be nominated for an Oscar. So there you are. He was never nominated for anything else. You know, he was such a massive star, and towards the end, he never got the recognition he deserved. So I think it's time to give Porky an honorary Oscar. So whoever's listening that's part of the Oscars, I think Porky Pig needs his honorary Oscar. I think it's long overdue. But anyway, that's another thing entirely. So there were a few things that were missed. And again, the restrictions of the commentary format I was doing at the time means that we can't go in depth as we could. But these reviews are here to correct all of that. So let's go through this short again and go through some of the things that I missed, starting with Lockheed Aircraft Factory. That's a play on the Lockheed Aircraft Factory, and that was a factory supplying aircraft. So this short is World War II themed, but thankfully it's not the main focus, and you don't even need to know that reference. You don't even need to know that part of this is a play on what was happening in the war at the time. You can just watch this and enjoy it for all the silly crooning and all the silly behavior of the hens later on and that sort of thing. And I do love the initial quick cuts that set up the hens going to work, because it's also interesting because at the time a lot of the men were off to war fighting the good fight, but who's going to man all the positions in these factories? The women all stepped up and they went into Lockheed and other factories doing things for the war, and yeah, they were doing quote-unquote men's work at the time. Of course, when the men came back, well, you can imagine what happened next, so there you are. But I like the fact that they're using hens in place of women here because it actually works in that way. So we see the punch clock, and I like the added touch of the punch clock making a different sound whenever it hits. Just as a little minor, harmless gag. It's easy to miss. I actually didn't even notice it before, but yeah, we even see someone else is late and they cheat by pushing back the clock. These days with all digital stuff to sign on and everything with fingerprints and all that, yeah, you can't cheat that well anymore, but back then, yeah, you can find easier ways to cheat and come to work late but still get paid for the time you weren't there for, but anyway. Now this was already mentioned in the track, but my goodness, as soon as Warner's got the rights to use Raymond Scott's music, Carl Stalling really goes to town with its usage, and this is perhaps one of the most famous uses of Powerhouse in Looney Tunes. Just about any time you see a factory, they use Powerhouse, right? But this is one of the first times, and my goodness, it works so well. It's like Raymond Scott wrote his music for Looney Tunes. That's how synonymous it all is. It's fantastic. And we even see how the chooks all stand still on like one frame, so they're not even animated, they're just sitting there and they're just moved around the actual background, and even defying gravity in a few cases. So yeah, the chooks go through and they typically lay only one egg, and I love the grin by that chook, which only lays one egg. I love the expression in this one, it's fantastic. And we even see that one egg is falling, but it's caught at the very last second. It's one of those gags that you sort of do a mild little chuckle, and that's that. But yeah, it's fine. It's fine. So we see that Porky must really have some big military contracts because he's sending eggs all over the world, you know? He's sending it to China, Britain, Russia. Wow. His chooks are really fighting the good fight from the home front, and it's just incredible. I mean, I guess Porky's experience as a farmer and all those shorts before has really paid off, right? So we see one little gag where the chook doesn't lay an egg, but then we get a tilt. for some reason. So instead of having the chook maybe just go through the conveyor belt again, nah, everything's wound back for some weird reason, just for that chook to try again, but this time the chook lays tons of eggs. I do have to wonder what's happening behind that curtain. Were the eggs all squeezed out? I don't know, but anyway, whatever. So now all the chooks start hearing the Sinatra rooster and say, Frankie. And that's the kind of thing that would end up being reused in Book Review a few years later by Bob Clamp, and that's where I saw that kind of gag first. But hey, Frank Tashlin did it first, and we hear him sing the song It Can't Be Wrong in this bit, and that's what I'm going to point out as well that wasn't pointed out in the original track, what the songs are actually sung in this short. And I love how the chooks are just so smitten. In fact, at one point, the eggs even return to the chook by going in reverse. I love that. Fantastic. That's like one of my favorite gags. It just runs off. It's like, oh, I got the eggs back inside me. But anyway, so we now see the Sinatra rooster, which we already pointed out, all the gags involving him being incredibly thin at the time. Here is voiced by Dick Biggenbuck, and if that name's familiar to you, see, at the time he was an animator for Warner's, but later on he would go to MGM and work on Tom and Jerry. But then most famously, I would say he was at Hanna-Barbera, and he was the one responsible for a lot of the early Hanna-Barbera and the look and all that. He was one of the people that made Hanna-Barbera look like Hanna-Barbera, really. So that's where you've probably seen his name before, but apparently he did really good impressions of Frank Sinatra and a few other celebrities as well. So we've already covered the mass appeal of women going gaga over Sinatra at the time in the commentary. He was the new thing on the music scene, and Avery, of course, would revisit the idea later on. So moving on past that, Porky's wondering what is happening. He sees absentee signs everywhere and ditto and all of that, so he's frantically looking for the chooks, and in one weird bit I didn't even notice before, he lifts up a water pump and he sees a water cooler underneath for some reason, but alright. It's one of those little blink and you miss it gags. It's funny. I like it. And we then continue with the chooks being smitten, with one even losing their feathers to reveal some lingerie underneath. I mean, this is a Tashlin short, so we're going to have some sort of sex appeal, right? Even if it does involve the chooks. So Sinatra's now singing as time goes by, and my goodness, the different ways the chooks lose it over this Sinatra rooster, my goodness. Wow. I'd like to see actual footage of women at the time losing it over Sinatra. That would be interesting to see, and see how it compares to the exaggerations that they do here. So Porky's clearly not happy because the production is now going to fall behind because the chooks are distracted by Sinatra. So Porky now puts out an ad, and the other parts of the paper just look like it's just some random classifieds that was just maybe lying around. They're just slapped on top that little advertisement. But what exactly is the plan here? Wouldn't another rooster just continue to distract the hens? And there's not even a place to apply. It's just apply Porky Pig, like everyone knows Porky Pig, right? And his farm. But anyway, again, what's the plan here? He's a farmer. Farmers do, I don't want to get gruesome here, they do remove troublesome roosters in certain ways. Why not just do that and the hens can get back to work? But anyway, okay, whatever. It's just a cartoon, I know. So we see all the auditions, and I do love this bit here. All the voices, and this comes from Keith Scott's wonderful Cartoon Voices book, but all voices except for Bing Crosby are done by Sammy Wolf Glasser. So first up, he does an imitation of Nelson Eddy. That was already mentioned in the commentary, I know, but what I do want to mention is that he sings a version of Shortening Bread, and I love the rendition there. It's fantastic.
Mama's little baby loves shortening, Mama's little baby loves shortening bread.
We then see Al Jolson. He sings September in the Rain, and that was actually already done in a short by the same name by Friz Freleng, although it's a lot more exaggerated here, and I think it's actually funnier here. I think it was a bit more serious than that Merry Melody short, but here they just play for laughs, of course.
The leaves of brown came a tumbling down, remember, Mammy, me baby, in September, in the rain.
We then see Jimmy Durante. He's singing Lullaby Broadway here, and I love the version done here. If you've heard the original song, this is hysterical, and the audience at the time would have laughed at this rendition, whereas these days we might watch this and just see this crazy-looking bird doing this crazy song, and that's it. So it works in both ways.
Come on along and listen to the lullaby of Broadway, the hipperay and Sally Coon, the lullaby of Broadway. Mortified.
We then see Cab Calloway. We already mentioned how Tashlin already did a parody of Cab Calloway, but here he sings Blues in the Night, which I like the rendition here.
Heidi, hi, ho, I got to do the
So now we see the Bing Crosby bird, and once again is voiced by Dick Bickenbach. Now what's interesting is that all the roosters that were auditioning at this time for Porky were perhaps the most popular in the 30s. Now, of course, no one would have forgotten about him or anything, but with Sinatra being the new big thing at the time, the other ones could be seen as a little bit passé or old school or whatever at the time. And that's not to say they weren't releasing new stuff or people still weren't fans of them or anything, but we all know about popularity. It's pretty fickle. As soon as a new big thing comes around, the older artists tend to be less favored, and that's that. And I think that's just what they're playing on here, especially with Al Jolson by this point. So he sings When My Dreamboat Comes Home. Love the rendition here. I mean, Dick Bickenbach's voice imitating the two main roosters is absolutely impeccable. Amazing. You know, if he wasn't such a good artist, you know, he could have had a career as a voice actor, really. He was that good.
When my dreamboat comes home, then my dreams no more will roam. I will meet you and greet you.
And all the chooks now just go in reverse to what they did before. And I just love the reaction of the chook to Bing as she just goes backwards, clucking like mad and laying eggs. It's just, you can see also Tashlin just going to town, seeing how exaggerated they can make all these chooks go. So, of course, Frankie's not happy, and I guess that's a play on the fictionalized rivalry between the two, which Steph already pointed out was just something that was played up and they were actually friends anyway. But he sings I'll Pray For You while we see wonderful animation of the chook's body again waving backwards and forward. Bing now sings Trade Winds to another chook, and all the chooks are just going crazy and crazy, laying eggs. So we just build up to the point where they're just now all going crazy, laying eggs, including my favorite bit with the little chick laying a giant egg, which was a weird joke that seemingly came out of nowhere, but anyway. So Sinatra now sings Always in My Heart. We see even more eggs. And finally, Bing sings You Must Have Been a Beautiful Baby. So we cut to night. We see that there's so many eggs that haven't been able to be packed because there's just so many, right? And we get the punchline. Porky asks, you know, how did you do it? And you know what the punchline's gonna be. The roosters start singing, and sure enough, Porky now lays eggs too, and that's that. Wow. You know, revisiting this one, again, this is one of those ones where, okay, I have to revisit it as a review and so on and so forth. But at least I can watch some of these funny ones again and pay closer attention to some of the things I missed. Yeah, it's such a chore, isn't it? It is when I have to redo the buddies, obviously, but for these ones, nah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. It's another fantastic Tashlin short. Again, it's not a go-to short, but my goodness, this is such a great one. This one gets about 9.5 out of 10. It works so well, even if you don't get the war references, even if you don't get the references to any of the musicians and what they're singing. So, yeah, this one's definitely worth watching, and you can do so on physical media. Just click one of the links below, pick up one of those sets, and you'll certainly have a good times. And yeah, that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and until next time, take care.
Those eggs.
It's very simple, Porky. Like this. Ha!